Hello everyone, and welcome back to another wonderful week with Toronto and Region Conservation Authorities at Home with Nature program. Today I am going to be talking to you all about unbelievable beavers. So I'm going to talk to you about the unique adaptations that beavers have, and I'm also going to talk to you about why they're so important to our local ecosystems. So I'm going to be answering questions at the very end of my discussion. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in, and then at the very end I'll try and get to answering your question. So, what is a beaver? Well, when we think of beavers, we think of those really neat creatures on the back of our nickel. They're really large rodents with a paddle-like tail. And these guys here, we can find all across Canada. There are two species of beavers across the world. We have our North American beaver and the Eurasian beaver. So the beaver we have here in Canada is the North American beaver. And when we see our beavers, we often see them mostly in the water. And so beavers have some really fantastic adaptations that make them really, really incredible swimmers. So the first thing is that their feet are webbed. So webbed feet just means that between each point there's a tissue or membrane that connects their fingers together. So if you imagine a duck or a frog, these creatures have webbed feet. And those webbed feet that beavers have help them paddle through the water much more easily. Then they have their long tail, and their long tail acts like a rudder on a boat and helps them navigate through the water more easily. As well, they have really special fur. So I have a beaver pelt here. And if you look really closely, you've got this really soft, downy under fur. This undercoat allows them to keep warm, especially in the winter time, because Canada's winters are really, really cold. So this downy undercoat keeps them warm. Then they have this really kind of spiky, harsh overcoat. And this overcoat protects them. It's a guarded layer of fur. But when I touch the beaver pelt, both the undercoat and the overcoat have a very oily feeling to them. And that's because beavers produce their own oils and they rub them across their fur. Now this oil helps keep them dry as they get out of the water or as they're swimming in the water. As well, it helps them swim a little bit faster. And last but not least, they have one extra cool adaptation. So they have a third eyelid. So when you and I, when we look at our eyes, we have our top eyelid and our bottom eyelid, but beavers have one more eyelid. And this eyelid is underneath and it's clear or transparent. And this allows them to be able to close that third eyelid while they're underwater, and that eyelid acts as goggles to help them see underwater. So if you can imagine while you're swimming, when you dive under the water, it's a lot harder to see with just your eyes. But when you're wearing goggles, all of a sudden everything's very, very clear. So this third eyelid helps them to be able to see under the water. So as beavers are swimming, they're doing a number of things. They're looking for food. Some of their food underwater are aquatic plants. They're also moving around to help build their dam and their lodge. So I have a beaver skull here. So what do beavers eat? I mentioned that they're looking for aquatic plants, but they also eat things like twigs and bark of trees. They have really, really strong jaws and really, really strong teeth. So when we think of beavers, we think of these incredible creatures with buck teeth. Well, those teeth have two different coats of enamel. They have a front enamel, which is orange in color, and this enamel is really rich in iron. It makes it really, really strong. Then on the back of their teeth, they have a white enamel that's similar to ours, which is fairly weak. Now, beavers' teeth keep growing and growing and growing, so they need to chew to maintain their teeth. And as they're chewing, this top coat, this orange enamel, breaks down much more slowly than the white enamel, so it creates a really sharp point for the beaver, and that helps them be able to chew and cut down trees and branches and logs. Now, why are they doing that? Well, they're cutting down these trees and branches and logs so that they can help build and maintain their lodge and their dam. So what is a beaver dam? A lot of people think that beavers live in dams, but they don't live in the dam. The dam that they build, they often build it in rivers or streams, and what this does is it slows down the water from moving and builds the water up behind the dam. So they're changing the ecosystem by doing this. So by stopping the water, almost like when we put a plug in the bathtub, all of a sudden the water is building up behind the dam. And they change what was once a river into a wetland, a pond, or even sometimes a lake. Now the reason why they do this is because they want to build their lodge in the middle of that pond or lake. And the lodge is where they live. So a lodge is again made out of mud and sticks and branches, and the entrance for it is underwater. But the lodge itself is actually quite dry. The advantage of having their lodge entrance underwater means that their predators like eagles or coyotes can't actually get to their home. So it's really, really neat for them to be able to access their home underwater. And beavers spend a really, really big part of their waking hours building and maintaining their dams and their lodges. So beavers stay up all night. They are nocturnal animals. They're super active during dusk and dawn, but they are up all night long. Now, when beavers build their dams, they do something really special to our local ecosystems. So we call them ecosystem engineers, because as they change these ecosystems, they make some really, really big impacts to those ecosystems. So I want you to imagine a river. So maybe it's a fast-moving river. There's some fish in this river, but only fish that can do really well with fast-moving waters. And there's some insects, but maybe only along the edges because the water is moving too fast. You have a few plants along the side, maybe some trees, a few birds here and there. But then all of a sudden you have a beaver move in, and they add their dam. All of a sudden you now have water slowing down. So with that slowing water, you might have new vegetation, so new plants, aquatic plants that move into the area. You might have fish that weren't able to survive in fast-moving water. They might move in now. You might have insects that couldn't live there before are now moving in because they can lay their eggs on the slow-moving water. Now, maybe because of all of those new insects, you have all sorts of new birds moving in as well. Maybe we have some reptiles moving in. We might have turtles. We might have amphibians like frogs and toads moving in. All sorts of new creatures start to move into this ecosystem and really starts to increase the biodiversity of that ecosystem. And what that means is that there are more types of living creatures, of different types of living creatures that start to come to that ecosystem. So really it's changing so dramatically, and this is a good thing. When we see these increases in biodiversity, that is a great thing. So beavers are really, really special in doing this, and we call them ecosystem engineers. They're also super smart. Beavers, if you can imagine, there's only so many trees that they can chop down as they are trying to build their dams and lodges in an area. So eventually they have to go more inland. And I want you to imagine trying to carry a big heavy tree as a beaver back to the water on land. That would be hard. They can make things a little bit smaller by chewing them down, but that's still pretty heavy. So actually, beavers do something really smart. What they do is they dig canals from their lake or pond or wetland, and they'll dig until they get to the area where they're going to chop down the trees. Then they push those logs into the water. Now, if you can imagine while you're swimming, everything feels so much lighter in the water. So they use the buoyancy of the water to make those logs feel really nice and light, and then they can push them down their canals and use the water to move all of those different logs back to their dam and back to their lodge. And I think that is super, super neat. Now, one really fun fact, did you know the biggest dam that we know about is 850 meters long? That's almost 1 kilometer long. In fact, it is longer than the CN Tower is tall. Isn't that crazy? So that's the biggest beaver dam that we know about. It's in Alberta, Canada, and you can actually see it from satellite views, which is really, really neat. All right, guys, so I am really ready to answer some of your questions about beavers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys the skull a little bit closer, and I will answer some of your questions. All right. How many babies can they make? Very good question. So their babies are called kits. They can have several kits. On average, they have about like 4 to 6, but they can have more than that. All right. Are there any tree species that they cannot digest? That's a very good question. I know that they prefer things like birch, for example, but I'm not sure if there are ones that they don't like to eat. That's a really good question, and I'd really like to get back to you on that one. I will get back to you after our live stream. Is the fur coarse or soft? It's very soft. Actually, so beavers, when settlers moved to Canada, beavers were really overhunted because of their fur is so soft and so warm. Settlers really overhunted beavers for their meat and their fur. So they were actually a threatened species for a long time, and they're finally coming back to regular population. So that's a good sign. All right. Will we see real beavers? Well, guys, because we're still trying to stay home because of COVID, I'm just in my backyard today, but I encourage you next time you go for a walk and go to a wetland, take a look around. What kind of signs can you see? Can you see a beaver dam? Can you see a beaver lodge? Beavers themselves are really hard to see, but they leave some really unique signs behind. And one of the best signs to be able to see is a tree that has been chewed down. So you can still see the stump of the tree, but it's really obvious when a beaver has come along and chopped it down. How long can they stay underwater? Amelia, that's a really good question. From what I understand, that they can stay underwater a fairly long time, so about 15 minutes, but they can hold their breath a really, really long time, which is great. What is the best time of day to see beavers? Well, because beavers are nocturnal, you'll see some activity during the day, but it's not very common. Most often we see beavers during dusk and dawn, so sunset and sunrise. That's our best chance to be able to see a beaver, but they're very, very active during the night time. But I highly recommend, if you're trying to spot a beaver, check it out during sunset or sunrise. Are beavers solitary animals? They are not. They really love living with their families. So not only are they monogamous, they have one partner, but they also tend to live not only with their new babies, their kits, but they also have their yearlings. So as their babies reach adulthood, for the first few years, they'll stay with mom and dad before they branch off and try and find their own partners and build their own dams and lodges. Do the beavers chew down healthy trees, or do they pick ones that are ready to fall? Good question, Amelia. They love healthy trees. They will chew down pretty much anything. So oftentimes we see, especially around wetlands, maybe sometimes people have gone in and specifically planted new trees in that area, and then beavers get in and they take those trees down. And that's okay. They're building their own dam. So they will definitely eat healthy trees. All right. Any more questions, guys, about beavers? Oh, could I post a link to the big beaver dam in Alberta? I definitely can. I'm going to post it to you guys once I'm done this live stream, but I can definitely show you guys how cool that beaver dam looks. All right. Any more questions? Doesn't look like it. All right. So I'm going to get right back in front of the camera. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We have a really great worksheet. If you check out the link above, we have a fantastic worksheet all about beavers. That's fun for the family and all ages, so definitely check that out. And check out our upcoming live stream that's going to be happening here tomorrow at 2 p.m. We have, again, another At Home with Nature program with our Meadoway team. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. All right, have a great day.